first, Vanessa, thank you so much for being a guest on SheLeads. I am so excited to get to hear your story and just talk to you more. So thank you for joining.
Thanks, Carly. It was great to be connected and happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. So Vanessa, you are a partner at New Enterprise Associates, or commonly referred to as NEA, which is one of the top VC firms in the country. But before even going into venture capitalism, you have a lot of experience not only in product-related roles at these top tech companies like Microsoft, Twilio, Box, but also a lot of experience in the gaming industry. So why don't we start there? What made you, after college, what made you go to Microsoft, and then what made you get into the gaming industry? And then ultimately, what drew you away from it?
Yeah, so I went to school for computer science, and this was back in the day when product management wasn't a thing.
Okay.
So when I was looking for my internships my junior year, I was interviewing for engineering roles, and I was at Microsoft, and halfway through my interview, the interviewer was basically stopped, was like, "Do you want to be an engineer?" It's like, to be honest, like I can write code. I just don't want to write code all day.
Right.
And he was like, "Have you heard of product management?" And I hadn't. And so we talked through it, and they stopped my interview for a PM interview. And I loved it. And I interned as, they call it, a program manager, and had a blast. And then when it came to a full-time offer, I wanted to explore everything that was out there. So I originally thought I'd go into sales, software sales, or maybe I'd go into that engineering role. But after long deliberations and looking at the offers I had on the table, the Microsoft offer to work on the Surface, back in the day, it was a big, giant table. And this was when touch technology was just starting to take off. Put it into context, the iPhone had just come out.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, touch technology is going to be the new greatest invention ever. And so I wanted to be a part of that. So I decided to take the PM job on Surface. And I did that. And it was really fun trying to educate developers on how to build touch applications, because the idea of a tap interface just was so foreign to everyone. And then a few of my friends were on the Xbox Connect team. And they recommended me for a job on the speech recognition team. And it was basically a lot of the same, which was, this is a new interface, which is speech recognition, and developers don't know how to build experiences using speech recognition. So could I go to that team and take everything that I've learned on Surface and build out the speech experience team for the platform for Xbox Connect? And I had a lot of friends that had joined that team. I was like a year and a half out of college. I thought it'd be fun to work with my buddies. I thought it'd be fun to work on an Xbox. And I just kind of fell into it. I never pursued gaming. And then once I was in gaming, it was a blast. We launched Connect V1. And after it launched, I wanted to move to Silicon Valley. And so at the time, Zynga and Playdom and all the gaming companies were really taking off. And so I wanted to be a part of that. And so I moved down here, took a job with Playdom, and spent more time in gaming.
Yeah. So one thing about gaming that I think, one part that may have drew you away from it, is this idea where you almost have to make it addictive in order for it to be successful. But then it's also kind of this moral dilemma where you're keeping these people on these games and maybe away from in-person interaction or doing those things. Did that come into play at all, or how did that play a role in being in the gaming industry?
I want to say that played a role, but the truth is it didn't play as much of a role as it probably should have. I left gaming because gaming is really hard. It's a hits-driven business, and no one can tell you what would be a hit. There's no formula to making a hit.
Yeah.
And so you'll spend all of this time building out a game, and you can test it with users, and then you put it out in the world, and some take off and some just don't. And it's really hard to figure out why some do and why some don't. Even if your game takes off, you make a lot of money right up front, but then you're on this, what we call the content treadmill, which is you have to release new chapters and new characters and new environments. And it's never ending.
Yeah.
And your users are very discerning. And it's very different than enterprise SaaS, where you can put a product solution out there and people can use it and take a lot of benefit out of it without you having to release more and more features at that rapid pace, right? There's no consuming of an enterprise SaaS product. Whereas in gaming, once you consume a chapter or level, you're done with it and you need the next one. Otherwise, you're kind of done.
Yeah.
And so the content treadmill is actually what really, I just got burnt out.
Okay.
It's like very easy to get burnt out in gaming, and I got very burnt out.
I see. So in the middle of all of that, you also co-founded your own company called FunLoop. So tell me a little bit about that and what drew you. Did you always know you wanted to start something one day, or how did that happen?
Yeah. So I think that there's yes, I always knew I wanted to start something.
Okay.
And I think that was probably what made FunLoop not turn out to be a big success, which was a few coworkers and I had always wanted to start a company. And you have to realize this is around the time Facebook IPO'd, and there are entrepreneurs that were my age that were building really big, impactful companies. So a lot of us were like, we've been very successful here at Playdom/Disney. Let's go and build our own company. Let's do this ourselves. And we didn't have an idea. We were just like, let's quit our job. Let's start a company. Oh, wow. And we were like very excited. We were fired up. We got this this is before we worked, but we had this temporary office on the east side of 101. And we sat in the room. We're like, cool. What's our company going to do? And then we just stared at each other. And that was the worst 2 months of my life, where we were like, what about this idea? And we're like, no, that's dumb. What about that idea? And someone would be like, no, that's dumb. I'm like, wait, no, my idea is great and your idea is dumb. And what ended up happening was we settled on I wouldn't want to say the lowest common denominator, but the one idea we could all agree with, but none of us were insanely passionate about, which was gaming again.
Yeah.
We basically were like, well, we know how to build games. We know there's an industry there. We've been successful. We could raise money as a gaming startup team. So let's go do that. Even though if you ask me would I wanted to do that for the next 20 years of my life, it would have been a stretch to say yes.
Yeah.
So we built a gaming startup. It was going well originally, and then a lot of things went sideways, and we ended up getting acqui-hired.
I see. So I feel like that's definitely an unconventional way to start a company but in the sense that you knew you wanted to, but you didn't really know what that was. So It's interesting. So I guess now kind of going into being a venture capitalist, what lessons did you learn from your own experience as a founder that you now take with you when you're looking at potential investments?
Yeah. So I still come across teams that start companies just to start companies.
Yeah.
That they think that they have they have an idea, but they don't have a lot of experience in that industry that they're going after. And so for me, that's a bit of a red flag. I want you to have felt the pain point and have experience in that industry and maybe have built the solution in-house somewhere. And then you're just like, everyone has this problem and everyone's building this in-house. Maybe we should start a company where we build something that sells to all these companies so engineers don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Right. So I'm very attracted to those stories as opposed to our story, which is we wanted to start a company and we had no better idea but this.
I'm sure though, from your own experience that you've learned that okay, that's not the way that we should do it. And there's better ways. And now that's you've learned that for your own experience as an investor. But yeah.
That's right. The other thing, my co-founders and I were all product people and we had one engineer. So it was 3 product people and 1 engineer. And we started a company together because we just liked working together.
Yeah.
Now when I look at founding teams, I want people to have complementary skills, not entirely overlapping skills. The problem with us, we were all entirely overlapping. So it just wasn't a very efficient use of time for a lot of the folks on the founding team, which caused some problems there too. So when I look at founding teams, I want to make sure that folks really complement each other and also work well together.
Right. So I guess we're going a little bit out of order, but now going back to your career, what led you to venture capital and how did you become an investor and all of that? What drew you to it?
So the funny thing is, if you would have asked me, am I going to go into venture?
Yeah.
honestly, like even months before I went into venture, I would have said absolutely no way.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, I had a very set, rigid, like this is my 10-year plan in life. I'm going to graduate college. When I joined Microsoft, I was like, I'm going to be a product manager at a big company. Then I want to go to a startup and learn how it's done. Then I want to start my own company. And then that company is clearly going to be big and IPO.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a lot of other opportunities that were really interesting. And I didn't even consider them because they weren't part of my plan. I just ruled them out entirely, which looking back, is probably a mistake. I think you have to be really flexible and open and opportunistic.
Okay.
But I was very determined and like, this is the path I'm going to follow. And then when my startup didn't work out, I had no idea what I was going to do.
Mm.
And so I finally settled on, I really love product management. I don't want to switch into sales or something different. But I'm going to do product management in enterprise software. And so I did that. And at that point, I was learning a ton about what it meant to be a product manager in enterprise, which is very different than a product manager in consumer.
Right.
And I was like, I just want to be a product person and maybe a CEO again someday, but like definitely through the product route. And this is like my dream, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So there was then no mention of venture ever.
Yeah.
And I'd known the folks at NEA for a while. I was approaching my 3-year mark at Box. My team had accomplished a lot, and I wanted to try something new. And so I figured I'd reach out to the folks at NEA to help me kind of figure out what companies I should be applying to and what head of product roles they had in their portfolio. And they wanted to meet with me and chat through what I was looking for. And then those conversations just led to more conversations at NEA, and then more conversations at NEA. And then when they asked me to join the team, I was floored. I did not really expect that. And I just needed a lot of time to think through, was I going to just completely give up on this dream I've had and do something totally different? Or should I just like stick to my guns and look for another product role? And ultimately I decided I never felt like I'd taken that type of risk in my career. And I loved the people. And after spending more time learning about what venture does, what venture capitalists do, I thought that there was a good overlap between the skill sets I had and what it would take to be a good investor. Okay. And there was enough that I still didn't know where I felt like I would learn a ton every day. And so I surprised my friends and family and said, I'm going to go into venture, and I am no longer a product manager. And honestly, I struggle with that. Like, I still think of myself as a product manager that's just like somehow in venture.
Yeah. So there's so many questions that I can go into, but I think first you mentioned that you saw a lot of the skills that would be a successful investor. You saw them in you already. What are some of those skills that you saw that you took with you?
Well, first and foremost, the hardest thing about being a product manager is leading by influence.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have the ability to tell people what to do. Right. When you're starting off in product. And then once you progress in your career as a head of product, it's still a lot of influence. Like, you never get over you don't just like say, this is our roadmap, everybody get in line. Yeah. It's more of like, here are some ideas about what a roadmap could look like. And here's some data that says that this is a good roadmap. And then you get engineering buy-off, and you get leadership buy-off, and then you get your teams buy-off, and you collect feedback and iterate. And then you eventually drive an organization towards building something, right? I use that skill set all the time from working with the entrepreneurs, right? I should never tell them what to do. I'm not there day to day. I don't know as much as they do. Yeah. But I could gather data from our sources and, be like, have you considered these things? And ask all the questions that I would ask of product engineers and designers and salespeople on my teams. And then, again, leading with influence in the partnership when you're trying to get your entire partnership excited about an opportunity. Again, you can't just say, like, this is exciting, get excited. Yeah. You have to talk to people and influence people and explain why it's so exciting and present them with the data that compels them to go in that direction with you. So it's a skill set I used a lot in product, and I have not put it to rest at all since being in venture. Obviously, technical aptitude helps a lot. So engineering background and understanding just the infrastructure of how things are built and can they scale, and is this a good quality product? Can it sustain? Does it meet what customers expect of it? And asking the hard questions, which is a lot of what a product manager's job is, in a way that doesn't freak people out. And then I think over the years as a product manager, you start getting some product intuition as to, like, are people going to use this? Does this product deliver value? And so when we do an analysis on an opportunity, we obviously look at the team and the financials and a lot of that, but also you have to look through the product. You have to do a cognitive walkthrough and really understand if people are going to be compelled by this or not, ultimately. And I think that's what I use most often.
Yeah, wow. I love that. I've actually never heard that the parallel, especially the first one about having to influence without like a real authority, and like how it's so parallel to venture and product management. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think I've only been in venture for close to 4 years, but I think if you're doing it right, you realize that you have no authority.
Yeah.
Like, you have no authority.
Yeah.
If you think you have a lot of authority over your portfolio companies, you're probably doing it wrong.
And I think that's probably a good, I think that's quite a valuable statement, considering that it should be like a relationship almost. You investor to the entrepreneur, and if you want to establish that trust, that relationship, then it should be this thing where you're not telling them this is what you need to do, but rather this is what you should do based on X, Y, Z. So I think that's pretty...
It's a partnership, right?
Yeah.
And the entrepreneurs that I work with and we lean on each other a ton, and we bounce ideas off of each other a bunch. And ultimately, there has to be really high trust there. And you don't build high trust by asserting authority on people.
Yeah.
Especially when they know more about the subject matter than you do.
Right. So kind of going into, I know you've worked at a lot of companies, and you've seen a lot of different cultures. And you've seen what cultures fit for you, but also what cultures probably are more successful than others. What would you say, like, now as an investor, what steps do you take to ensure that the company that you're going to invest in has a strong culture to succeed? And like things that you kind of take away from your experience that you can apply?
This is a really hard question. Look, I think culture ultimately gets set at the top, regardless of what people say. Like the DNA of the founding team runs so deep in the culture. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it and how you implement things. And all of those things just trickle down. And no matter how senior the people are that you hire around you, they start emulating some of those behaviors, like subconsciously. And so the culture is really a reflection of the founding team, is how I see it. And I'll say I've worked at many different types of companies, and some cultures just aren't for everybody, but they are for some people. As long as you're inclusive, I think if the culture only works for like one gender, or if it only works for one age demographic, you're going to have trouble scaling. It's going to be nearly impossible to scale, and you're going to inherently, it means you fail. But there are some cultures that are really touchy-feely, and like that's great for people across genders and ages and demographics, but it's not for everybody, right? It doesn't exclude a demographic, but it may exclude certain people, right? There are some that are very cold and very like factual. There's some that are pretty argumentative. And I think they're okay as long as they don't exclude like large swaths of people, and you could still hire, and the people that are there are happy to be there. What you'll find is in some cultures that are toxic, people, if you ask someone, why do you work there? It seems like a hard place to work. And it's the mission, or it's the team, or they say something that's like deeply profound, then like, okay. But if they say, because the company has grown so much and my equity is worth so much money and I'm going to make so much money off of this, that's a problem. Because if your company hits any kind of hiccup, or you have a down round, or you IPO and it kind of falls flat, you will have a mass exodus, and you cannot succeed if everybody leaves your company. So I think it's not as easy as like everybody, it's a culture that fits for everybody. It's very nuanced, but you can poke around and start getting the sense of like, are people here for the right reasons? And will they be able to hire thousands of people that will be here for the right reasons as they grow?
Interesting. So it's almost asking that question, like, why are you here? Why do you work here? That's very telling of the culture, actually. So
yeah,
very cool. And then obviously so you talked about how it's so important to be inclusive and have that diversity. So I'm interested, when you were deciding to go into venture, did you have other females in venture telling you how it is, or just like how has your experience been as a female in venture, and if it's been I don't know if you've ever had to, I've asked others this, and like if you've ever had to feel that you have to overcompensate or be that much more persuasive when you're bringing a deal to the table. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because I've never been a guy in venture. So it's kind of hard to know if I have to be more persuasive or less persuasive. I haven't been able to A/B test this one. What I will say is that I have been always one of the very few women in some kind of industry, right? So when I went to Xbox, there were like 3 women on my floor at one point. On my entire floor, there's like hundreds of people on my floor. So it's not something that's new to me. I think I'm kind of used to it, but I've been encouraged because typically I've been on one of the first waves, but within 6 months to a year, they've hired a bunch of other women. So like either I'm doing something right, or they're just like, let's guinea pig with this one. If she sticks around, we'll hire more. Right. But I haven't been one of the few women for very long, which has been really cool. When I came into venture, there weren't a lot of women in venture as a whole, but NEA seemed to have more women than the rest of the firms. And I could see that they were really valuing having diverse opinion. It wasn't just that I was a woman, but also I have my family's from South America, so I'm Latina, and I also like didn't go to an Ivy League. I went to a public university, and it was all the factor of all of those things where they really wanted just a different voice around the table. They wanted a different perception, and they wanted people to come at problems from a different way. And so the types of questions that they asked and what they found valuable or what I could bring to the table was really well thought out. And so I wasn't scared to join. I was actually very excited to join a team that really was looking for my input.
Yeah, cool. And it's actually funny, in a previous episode, a similar thing was said in the sense that in the beginning of their career, they were the only female, and like they had a male in their ear it was Julie Foudy, and she's a broadcaster, and everyone was male. And then suddenly she like noticed a couple years later where everyone was female actually. And like people in her ear, the producer, the executive producer, all female. So it's really cool to actually see that transition, how women are getting those positions and diversity is becoming that much more important. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. I've since learned a lot more about venture, and there was this cohort of women that came before us. There was a whole wave of women that came into venture in like 2016. But before that, there was a whole generation of women, and I think they really paved the way. And I think things were probably a lot harder for them. They cleared the path for us. It has been shockingly easier than I expected to be a woman in venture. And I attributed a lot to them. And I can only hope that I'm making it even easier for the next generation that follows. And I think that's kind of our responsibility. It's kind of on our shoulders.
Yeah, definitely.
To make that happen.
So before we get into the last 2 fun questions, I am interested, obviously, with everything that's happening these days with the pandemic and coronavirus, I'm obviously very interested in how your job has been so impacted by this and what you anticipate kind of for the future and the startups that you've already invested in and ones you're looking at. Like, how are you navigating around all of this?
First, this is hard for everyone. It's hard for the employees of these companies. It's hard for the leadership of these companies, and it's hard for the investors in these companies. Look, I think the leaders and their investors were trying to figure out how do we structure the company in a way so they can weather this storm. right? How do we make the capital that they have in the bank last as long as possible? And there's a lot of hard decisions, right? Like headcount planning is going to look very different this year than it did last year. Yeah. The budgets for marketing and all these plans and all this excitement and momentum that a lot of folks had envisioned for this year just needs to kind of get on pause, which is really hard for some folks to accept. There's been layoffs across the industry. It is never fun. I have never met an entrepreneur, no matter what people think about them in the media, that is like, oh, I'm so looking forward to announcing these layoffs. Yeah. And the ones that like screw up the layoffs epically that I've read about, it's probably because they really, really, really did not want to do these layoffs. Yeah. And some people, when faced with something that's really painful, avoid and underprepare. And some people over-prepare and come across as like super engineered. But this is not fun, literally, for anyone. So it's been hard. Yeah. There's been a lot of advising our portfolio companies on how do we extend runway, whether that be cost-cutting, fundraising, a combination of the two. Fundraising is really hard right now. I think the rounds that are getting done are typically investors and entrepreneurs having had a relationship for a while. And, entrepreneurs were like, well, I'm not raising now, but we should talk. And then the investors are like, well, keep me posted. And I think at this point, the entrepreneurs are like, I probably should take that capital. And investors are like, oh, I've been dying to invest in you, so let's do it.
I see. Okay.
So something that's been like in the works for a while, I think, is getting done. But net new, like, hi, nice to meet you, Carly. You need an investment from me. Is probably just going to take a little longer. Right. Yeah. And even for me, like if you ask me my emotional state, like the startups I work with, I am so emotionally, mentally, personally, financially invested in them. And it hurts to see them going through the things they're going through. And so to then like adopt another one by leading an investment, it's just like, I just need the emotional bandwidth. Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard to shift and get like super excited and fall in love with another company when you're just working through some tough things with the other ones.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not something that's said a lot about like just the personal well-being and the emotional burden that you're taking. And just, I think another thing that you mentioned, how dealing with these layoffs, I had in one of my classes earlier today, it was on organizational change, and we had a guest lecture. And I think one thing that's so important is that transparency factor and just like really respecting your employees internally and like being transparent with what you do know and knowing that, yes, this is such an uncertain time, but it's almost like this is what we have, this is what we know now, and we'll update you in a week or so. But I think that's really important. So it's true. It's such a hard time.
It is. I mean, there's been so many tears. Like nobody talks about the crying, but like men, women, there have been so many Zoom calls across my portfolio where we just like cry and just let it out. We've got to get through this. We will get through this. Let's just like get it all out and then plow through what we have to do.
Yeah. I think it's just it's such an uncertain time, just not knowing when it's going to be done. And just, I think all we can do is just ride it out, as you said, and just know that being together will get us through it. But so turning on a little bit of a positive note to end this off. So first, what's a passion or hobby that you have that's completely unrelated to your work?
Well, it's not necessarily a hobby, but I have a toddler. He's a 2-year-old, and he takes up a lot of my free time. Being a mom has been the craziest, most fun, rewarding adventure I've ever been a part of. It's also incredibly hard to balance a full-time job that's so emotionally involved, and I work nonstop. Like there's no clocking out, right? But he's amazing, and it's been a blast to be his mom. He's the greatest little kid in the world, obviously. I'll say that. And then outside of my family time, I have a horse.
Oh,
and so yeah, so I ride horses. Well, a horse. I don't have time to ride horses.
Yeah.
I ride a horse.
That's awesome.
Really early in the mornings, a few days a week.
Wow. So first of all, what's your boy's name? What's your kid's name?
My son's name is Liam.
Liam is so cute. And then I was gonna say, being a mother and this job is probably so hard to balance, but I assume you find that escape almost for yourself through riding your horse every morning or a couple mornings. Is that
every morning? But
yeah. Okay, maybe not every morning.
2 days a week, 2 to 3 days a week. Yeah, the horse part is like some folks like to go on runs. I think it's important to find the way that you do disconnect because you can get so wrapped up in work, but especially when you're really passionate and you love what you do, you get so wrapped up. But I think it's important to give your brain a break. Yeah. And so when I'm riding, I literally can't think of anything else because my horse will not tolerate that. Yeah. And I'll be like quickly dumped on the floor. So it's fun to just like think about something so totally different and to get to be outside, which is great. And then, being a mom adventure is challenging, but I've made a few moms in venture friend group circles, and some more experienced moms have helped me sort out all kinds of stuff. Like I am eternally grateful to them. And I have good friends that are now becoming moms and they're also in venture. And I was actually just texting one of them earlier, see how she's holding up. But the support that I'm getting from other women that are moms has been just awesome. Really incredible, really inspiring.
That's awesome. And now you're going to impart your own wisdom to these new moms. So that's great.
As best as I can. Yeah. I would say it's a work in progress. We're figuring it out on a daily basis.
So as a last question, which by the way, I love this, so thank you so much. But a last fun question is and I'm going to say you can't say horseback riding, but what is a fun or weird talent that you have that no one else really knows about? And I'll give you mine. This is what I've been doing in all my episodes. So I can throw blueberries or grapes. Grapes are a little bit easier, but I have yet to go get grapes in the air and then catching them. So I'll do it for you right now.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. Okay, so here's a blueberry.
Okay.
There you go.
Wow. That's impressive. Okay, a hidden talent that nobody knows. I can make animal balloons.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. I'm sure Liam will love that.
I have not. I don't think my husband even knows this. But it was like when I was like in elementary school, I went to a magic camp, and my favorite thing was making animal balloon art, and so I'm like super into it, and I still know how to make all kinds of animal balloons.
So have you used that talent sometimes, or when does that come out?
I think I've impressed my sorority sisters once when we were like decorating for a mixer, and I was like, "Oh, check this out!"
Oh my god, so I'm guessing that you will be using it soon for Liam. Just a while.
It's a good reminder. Yeah, it's a good reminder.
There you go. Well, that's great. I love it. So thank you so much, Vanessa. This has been great. I've learned so much, and I can honestly talk for another hour or so, but it's been so lovely. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. It was nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.